We're about to enter, we're celebrating, are we celebrating? We're worried about the 9th anniversary of the war in Afghanistan. I almost said Pakistan, that's also partly true. And we are about to enter its 10th year. We're accordingly going to talk to Robert Greenwald from Brave New Films because they've been on the warpath, if you will, to stop the war with their campaign called Rethink Afghanistan. Robert, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Thank you. Good to be with you, and congratulations, first of all the great stuff you've been doing on MSNBC.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. So, let's talk about Afghanistan. First of all, what's the numbers? We're starting the 10th year. How many people have been killed, and also what are the lovely successes we've had in Afghanistan, if any?
Well, there are so many numbers. Let's just start with a couple. We just recently passed 1,000 American deaths in Afghanistan, which we called attention to. We are spending $1 million for one soldier for 1 year in Afghanistan. And as my son pointed out to me yesterday in the New York Times when there was an article about how the military is going green, it can cost up to $400 for 1 gallon of gas to get it to some of the outward posts in Afghanistan. So the issue of deaths and financial resources, and then you combine it with the fundamentals, which are this is not a war that is making us safer. There is no evidence that whatever we do in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda is going to suddenly, wherever they are around the rest of the world, say, oops, we better put down our arms and our guns because the United States invaded and occupied Afghanistan. It doesn't make fundamental sense from a security point of view.
All right. And now, combined NATO troops, there's over 2,000 deaths. And for American servicemen and women, the number is above 1,220. So obviously it's taken a toll on literally our lives. But I know it's not fair to ask you because you're against the war, but what have we accomplished? It's been 9 long years. What do we get for all those lives lost and all that money spent?
Well, unfortunately, it's very hard to find any accomplishments, and trying to look on the positive side or even see the other viewpoint. But I tell you, when you go to Afghanistan, when you're there, when you're breathing and living and interacting with the third poorest country in the world, the policy becomes even more short-sighted, makes less sense. So I don't know how to qualify, I don't know how to lay out a case for what we've accomplished other than the fact that I think more and more people are aware that it's an effort to impose a military solution on non-military problems, and it's a time for serious stock-taking about U.S. empire. What are our resources? How do we want to use them? How do we protect national security in a smart and effective way that does not include an old-fashioned, outdated notion that you invade and occupy a country and that makes you safer? It doesn't make you safer. Al-Qaeda is not going to throw its guns down because we're in Afghanistan, and there are less than 100 Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, where the primary leadership of Al-Qaeda is in Pakistan.
We're talking to Robert Greenwald from Brave New Films. Robert, I want to touch on something you said there, third poorest country. Now, reading stories about what's happening in Afghanistan today, people on the ground say, the U.S. poured billions of dollars into this country. Where did it go? Because we don't see it. Security is not appreciably better in a lot of parts of Afghanistan, if not, most of Afghanistan. Where are these, hospitals and schools and all the other things that, we were supposed to have? So it's a good question. Do you know what the answer is? Where did all the money go?
Well, the money's gone to military. The military has not gone to schools. The military has not gone to jobs. The money has not gone to doctors. The money has not gone to the things that are profoundly needed and could make a radical difference in that country. And it costs a lot of money to fight a war. I don't remember what the number is. Each Predator is tens of thousands of dollars. Each tank that we get over there, the supply lines, to say nothing, of course, of the huge, obscene profit-taking that the contractors are making. There are more private contractors in Afghanistan than there are troops. There are over 120,000 contractors at the last report, and it's probably gone even higher. So they are skimming off the money. And, of course, the Karzai government, as everybody knows now, is extraordinarily corrupt. And when I was in the country, you know, we talk about corruption as an abstraction, but when it affects your daily lives, when you can't get water, when you can't get a ticket to line up to get a job, when you can't get a passport, when you can get nothing in the country without paying off, it gives you no commitment to the central government. And there is no central government other than one that's corrupt. I mean, again, the notion that there are over 40,000 villages in Afghanistan. So do we really think this government is going to be effectively governing in all those villages? And do we really think that the United States is going to solve that problem?
So, Robert, you know, we found out through the book of Woodward that when President Obama asked for 3 different strategies in Afghanistan, one was escalation, but the other one was exit strategy, another one was to remain relatively stable. Nothing surprising about that. But we found out that the generals basically came back and said, no deal. We're only going to give you one option, which is to do escalation, right?
Yep.
Now, that's stunning in a lot of ways, but I suppose we shouldn't be stunned after all these years. But my question is, why? Why do you think the generals want to stay so bad in Afghanistan?
Well, I make the analogy to a surgeon. You know, if you go to a surgeon, most of the time he or she are going to recommend surgery. That's what they're trained to do. It's not malice. It's not even malpractice necessarily. But if you ask generals and the military, how many troops do you need or what is the solution, they're not going to say bring in 100,000 school teachers. They believe in a military solution. And it's up to the civilians, it's up to the elected officials, it's up to the administration. And in reading the Woodward book, you know, Biden, who pushed back the hardest of anybody, to ask the fundamental questions, which is, what is the threat to our country, and how do we deal with that threat? And it's damn sure that an occupation of this size and expense is not making us any safer. And it was also interesting in the book, I don't know if you noticed it, they talked about how Petraeus was absolutely laser-focused on what he called the deadly serious competition of the message wars. And they've been brilliant at that, and we've not been as good.
So the message wars are on us, unfortunately. But, you know, that goes to the next question, which is I wonder and I fear, I don't think General Petraeus or the other generals are thinking, hey, you know what, if we continue this war, I'm personally going to get rich. I don't care who dies. I just want to get rich. I don't think that's what's happening, right? But at the same time, look, subtle incentives matter in life. In the macro picture, they wind up affecting people. There's no question about it. And every one of these generals is going to retire and get an enormous paycheck from the defense contractors who get enormously wealthy off these wars. Now, am I being too conspiratorial in bringing that up, or do you think that that has some relevance here?
Well, I think it has relevance in the way you pointed it out. It's not that the generals get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, all I want to do is have innocent people killed so I can get a bigger bonus. They look in the mirror and they say, I'm trained to do military. I can beat the Taliban with one hand tied behind my back, and I'm going to beat them because that's what I know how to do. But they don't ask the question of, what does beating them mean? How do we ever know that we've won a victory? How do you define it? And under what circumstances do they think they can win, given the history of the Soviet Union and others who've been in that country? And, of course, we all get affected by ego and career issues. You know, it's that whole sort of Freudian side of this rather than just the policy side, which is even, you know, the military are human beings, as you say. They have goals in their personal lives, and there's no question that it infiltrates it. Our job, in this case, it's one of the few examples where the policy is very clear that it's 100% fundamentally wrong, and if we just keep asking these fundamental questions, that's why we've seen the opinion polls shift so radically. I've never seen an issue that we've worked on at Brave New Films move faster.
You know, I think part of it is the bubble. These bubbles pop up, the Washington bubble, the Wall Street bubble, and the Pentagon bubble. And inside the bubble, the answer is war, they forgot the question, right? And so, the reason that bubble formed in the first place, I think, ultimately, is because defense contractors get rich off of the answer being war, right? And so they build an environment where the think tanks and the generals and the whole context is war, 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 and more war. And you're badass and you're successful and you're a great general if you win these wars, if you prolong these wars, not if you get out of these wars. And then it just, well, you look at that, by the end of 10, 20, 30, 40 years, everybody involved in that bubble got massively rich.
Well, unfortunately, we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen many times, and I think that it's an interlocking series of agendas and goals, and it connects the intellectual with the personal. Because, again, as I was saying, these people, they spend many years studying war. They go to they go to West Point, wherever they go, they study the manuals, and so they are convinced they can win any war. And there's nobody asking, and this is the perfect example, which is why the work at, I'm so proud of the work at Rethink Afghanistan. We have almost 50,000 people on Facebook now working and pushing messages around, where we just, again, it's very simple, it's very direct, which are, what does winning mean? How do we make ourselves more secure? How many troops? How much money? The generals are not asking those questions. We need to ask those questions. And for goodness sakes, with the economic disaster in this country, how many people, if you went and asked them, take the money for one troop, one soldier, 1 year, $1 million, how would you spend it? Now 2 soldiers, how would you spend it? Other than John McCain, I can't think of many people who would say, yeah, let's spend it on putting a soldier in Afghanistan for a year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're talking to Robert Greenwald from Brave New Films. They're doing Rethink Afghanistan. They've had tremendous success in swaying at least the American population. Politicians, that's a different question. But real quick, Robert, what I've always wanted to ask you, what would you have done differently? Like, if you were George W. Bush, would you have not gone into Afghanistan at all? Or if you did, how would you have gone, and how would it have gone differently?
Well, I think we're beyond the days, for the most part, of invading and occupying a country to go after some individuals. Remember, it was not the government of Afghanistan, for whatever it was worth, that did 9/11. It was some horrible, murderous people, and there should be a policy to go after, as there always is, go after bad guys, get them. But the notion that you take over a full country, and the notion now, again, the Woodward book talks about it so well, the extraordinary mission creep, where now the whole idea is to fix and improve and take over and eliminate the Taliban, makes no sense. So I would not use the notion of occupying militarily unless it was a government that, in fact, had declared war, or a government that had attacked us, but rather go after individuals and use as many people and countries around the world to do so.
All right, and the final question here is about the final irony of this war. So we now see in the press reports that the Karzai government is thinking of trying to reach a deal with the Taliban. Now, a lot of that makes sense given the current context of Afghanistan, but if in the end we fight this war for 9, 10, however many years, and we never got the leaders of al-Qaeda who were in Afghanistan who attacked us, and we not only didn't drive out the Taliban, but we make a deal with the Taliban so that they're part of the governing coalition. My God, what have we accomplished?
Well, I hope that we will be able to ask the question in a country that's fixated on military solutions and say that. What have we accomplished? How could we have spent the money elsewhere? And how could we make ourselves more secure? Progressives do need to talk about security. And in the fact in Afghanistan, it's a civil war, and there are terrible guys on both sides of the civil war. Taliban has done horrible things, and the warlords have done horrible things. So we are, in fact, intervening in a civil war for goals that are not clear. And we're going to do this time after time after time if we don't use this tragic war, which is clearly a disaster, to make the point that our military has to be stopped.
All right. Robert Greenwald, Brave New Films, Rethink Afghanistan. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere else. RethinkAfghanistan.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.